Good afternoon, and thank you for joining the National Center for Rural Road Safety's February webinar. Today's webinar is Rural Signing and Marking Resources. My name is Jamie Eidswick, and I am the manager for the Safety Center. We're going to get started here. It looks like from our polls that we have a good representation from around the country, with the majority, about 36%, being from the Southeast. We have quite a few of you guys joining us today. Most people are by themselves, but we do have a couple of groups out there. For those groups that we do have, if you could please send us a roster of who is in the room with you to our email address at info@ruralsafetycenter.org. Again, that's a roster with email addresses to info@ruralsafetycenter.org. That will allow us to send out our evaluation survey to everyone to have an accurate count of how many people attended the webinar, and also in order for you to be able to receive completion certificates. It looks like the majority of people joining us today are with state DOTs, about 38%, but we do have about 20% from local transportation departments as well, and about 12% from other federal, state, or local agencies, and about 15% from private consultants as well. And most people are joining us today by computer only, but we do have a few that are joining us on the phone as well. So for today's webinar, our duration is about an hour and a half, from 11 to 12:30 p.m. Mountain Time. We are offering CEUs for this webinar. In order to receive those CEUs, we will ask that you fill out our evaluation survey that will come out shortly after the webinar ends today. On that survey, if you could please check the box that you're interested in CEUs, or if you're interested just in a completion certificate, you can check that box as well and provide your email. We will send those out. It takes about 2 weeks before you will see either the application for CEUs or the completed certificate sent to your email, and this is due to allowing 2 weeks for the evaluation surveys to be filled out. In order to be eligible for CEUs, you will have to provide Montana State University with some information, including your Social Security number. That information will never be seen by the Safety Center. It goes directly to the university as you then become a student there, and will have an official transcript. So that information would be sent to you, again, if you choose to do so in the evaluation survey. Today's webinar is being recorded. And please ensure, if you're on the phone, that you also turn your computer speakers down all the way, otherwise you will have feedback. Your phone is being muted if you're on the phone while our presenters are speaking today. If you do have audio challenges, we have had a few in the past couple webinars. We've found out that most of these are from people listening to us over voice over the internet. If that does happen, we would ask that you please call in on the phone, as most of the times it is the Wi-Fi connection on your end. To maximize your presentation for the best viewing, if you press the 4-arrow button up on the top right-hand corner of your screen, that will maximize the presentation for you. And at the end of each section today, we will have time for question and answer with our speaker. Our presenter today is Robert Hull. Mr. Hull has more than 25 years of experience in the areas of transportation safety planning, safety program development and management, traffic engineering, and strategic planning and analysis. His experience includes transportation safety programs on the state, national, and international levels. As the former Director of Traffic and Safety Division of Utah DOT, he possesses extensive knowledge in the development of statewide direction, policies, and procedures for all traffic and safety management related to programs aimed at improving roadway safety. He leverages this expertise to help agencies at all levels, DOT, MPO, regional, and local, to better approach transportation safety planning and implementation. And we're grateful to have Robert Hull from Cambridge Systematics, a part of the Safety Center team, present to us today. And so I'm going to turn it over now to Robert.
Great. Thank you, Jamie. I appreciate the opportunity, and I appreciate everybody being online today. Good morning or good afternoon, depending on your location. Very excited to go through this webinar with you and present information on signing and marking on rural roads. Just to get started, we wanted to highlight what some of the goals are of this webinar. And we hope that each attendee would be able to, at the end of this, know some of the potential benefits of implementing signing and marking improvements, be more aware of the available resources, information that's available for signing and marking, and have a good sense of what successful signing and marking improvement implementations may be. So what I'm going to do here is now move forward with some of the learning objectives. Jamie, it seems like I'm not able to advance the slide. Okay, got it. There we go. So what we're looking at is, in terms of this webinar, would be to give you the tools needed to identify critical signing and marking maintenance issues, understand the resources that you can use, and discuss some critical liability issues with signing and marking maintenance. Our webinar today is broken up into 3 different sections. We're going to be looking at signing and marking opportunities, look at specific safety emphasis areas and locations that you may be facing out there. One of the other critical elements in this section is dealing with vulnerable road users. We will look at that group specifically. Our second section is the maintenance of signs and markings, looking at signing and marking inventories, what would go into making a good signing and marking program, and identifying some of those key issues you'll be facing out there. And this third section is moving on into that area of challenges, but looking at some of the more operational issues of liability and litigation issues, funding and budget limitations, and we have a small section for resources on signing and marking issues on tribal lands. Well, let's get started on section 1. And to kind of whet your appetite in terms of what we're going to be talking about today, we wanted to ask you, just in your mind, to think about what you see as some of the issues associated with this stop sign in this photo. Just to kind of think through, if you were involved with a signing program in your area, what would be some of the critical elements and critical issues you'd be recognizing here? As you can see, that the sign itself has a lot of wear and tear, some graffiti and vandalism associated with it, maybe past its useful life, and also, we may be talking about some issues in terms of MUTCD, manual traffic control devices, compliance. If you notice the very faded sign below the stop sign, it should say, or as you can see it, is no standing or stopping. So in that sense, it kind of gives a conflicting message. We want to talk now about locations where sign marking are a proven low-cost safety countermeasure. There are signing and striping is always a good factor in improving safety. And what we're going to do, kind of touch upon here, is some critical locations, priority areas that maybe you should be considering and looking at. Clearly, this does not cover every issue that is being faced out on rural roadways, and we definitely are not presenting all the countermeasures associated with that. But these are maybe some priority areas to consider. Starting with curbs, according to national statistics, 40% of all rural fatal crashes between 2010 and 2013 occurred on curbs. This is clearly an issue that everybody faces nationwide. And looking at some of the low-cost signing and countermeasures that could be implemented are rural edge line markings, looking at delineators and chevrons, the critical issue of maintaining retroflectivity, and focus on the use of curve warning signs. What we're going to do is look at some examples here of these issues, these locations, specifically with curbs. So in this situation, what we're showing here is a nighttime photo, obviously, that if you notice, you really cannot tell where the edge of the pavement is, edge of the roadway is. But yet you, with quality striping, edge line striping there, you can see where your travel lane is and where that edge of that roadway could be, and provides you great, good guidance of where you need to be. Another example of mitigation is chevrons and curb signs installed along a curb. What this photo depicts here is a very rural road, dirt road, the county road, that you sort of notice that it does bend to the left all by itself, but you clearly, with the photo on the right, can see with the addition of chevrons and the curb sign, you as the driver clearly know what you are approaching and what's coming up. Next special area that we want to talk about in rural locations is intersections. During, again, the national statistics, there were 10,234 rural intersection-related fatal crashes across the country. Looking at some of the countermeasures that you could implement. Again, looking at signing with the proper retroreflectivity, some advanced warning signs for the intersections. Also, stop ahead signs and markings, and dotted edge lines through intersections to continue to indicate where the travel lanes are and that you're passing through an intersection. So adjusting retroreflectivity, we wanted to show this is a very good sign. The source is Fhwa, really indicates some of the significant differences between the retroreflectivity of the different sign components there. And as you can tell, the stop sign is very, very faded, and the all-way placard underneath is very clear and very identifiable. It's important to point out that the retroreflectivity does decline over time. May also depend on the the way it faces, southern, western exposures versus north-south, northeast. But sometimes to also need to be aware of, you may be able to see the sign during the daylight, but at night it may be faded as this sign shows here. We also are showing some applications of different signs that could be considered when talking about intersections. These are two signs that one indicates stop ahead, the other one is indicating a curve, but also indicates an intersection along that curve. It's important to note that some of these may be hard to detect visually, and so these advanced warning signs provide the driver a good opportunity to know what's coming and what's ahead. We also wanted to address this special area of rail grade crossings. As you can see, 55% of all rail grade crossing fatalities happen on rural roads across the country. It's very important that the drivers are alerted and that the vehicles are stopped at these areas, at these special locations. And wanted to talk a little bit about show you an example of retroreflective channelizing devices that may help with gate violations. In the Mbtcd, I seem to have lost, there it is. The Mbtcd does show advanced warning signs for rail crossings, and and there's information of how these are all used in the Mbtcd. It's again very critical. These are very the areas that can result in very severe and often fatal crashes. This is the example of the retroreflective channelizing device at a grade crossing, which clearly indicates that where the travel lanes are and prohibits or minimizes the opportunity for drivers to go around the lower gates when there's a train approaching. One issue we did want to bring up is we are talking about signing and striping sort of in their silos, but at the same time need to pay attention to the opportunity of combining safety countermeasures, not only signing and striping together, but signing and striping together with some other safety improvements that have been proven to be very effective and even more effective when combined. So some of these additional safety countermeasures that can be used in conjunction are high friction surface treatments, some ITS, Intelligent Transportation System installations, roadway repaving, and rumble stripes and rumble strips. I'm going to talk a little bit about each of these, in particular with the high friction surface treatment. These are, especially when we're talking about areas with curves, this has been proven to be a very effective treatment, that it improves the skid resistance of the pavement, especially if you're having areas where a little bit of moisture causes cause the pavement to get slick and people run off the road. This is a great mitigation to improve that. The other important thing is it can be applied to the roadway on the surface. It's a very thin surface layer. It's resistant to polishing and provides great, again, that friction, that traction that vehicles need. If you combine that with some striping, some enhanced striping or signing in that area, this is a very good opportunity to deal with those areas. Intelligent transportation systems, while they may not necessarily be overly viewed as low cost, they can provide enhanced opportunities for the drivers to be warned of what's approaching and what's ahead. And we have examples of 3 different types of applications here. The one on the right is indicating that there are approaching vehicles at a stop-controlled intersection. There's detection devices in the pavements. These have been implemented in several states around the country and have shown to be very effective. Changeable message signs, again, give an opportunity to provide a little more information to the drivers as they are approaching these special circumstances. And the photo in the middle is indicating a speed for the vehicle that are approaching, and can be used in conjunction with some advisory speed signs or in advance of areas of a curve where you definitely need to slow the vehicles down before entering into the curve. Some other examples here. This is an interesting application. In particular, there's the sign in the middle of the photographs there. As you can see, when there are no vehicles, it's blank, it's dark, but when it detects a vehicle, it gives an enhanced warning of that curve that is fast approaching. And one of the most widely used, but yet very, very beneficial and cost-effective countermeasure is rumble strips, and later introduced the rumble stripes. So you can see the 2 different examples. One of the strips on the left and the stripes on the right, with the pavement markings in place within the rumble, the ground rumble. Very, very highly effective countermeasure, especially when we were talking about centerline rumble strips. Those studies have shown a 40 to 60% reduction in crossover crashes. So very, very effective. So in our next segment, we wanted to talk about vulnerable road users and addressing some of the signing and striping issues associated with those. Our first area here is on pedestrians, and in some states across the country, there's a growing trend of the number of pedestrian fatalities occurring in the states across the country. Very significant in urban areas, but also issues to consider while out in the rural areas. One of the key issues here is really enhancing the visibility of the pedestrian crossing areas, and looking at that with increased visibility of crosswalks, looking at not only the striping, the marking, the use of signs, rectangular rapid flashing beacons, and the pedestrian hybrid beacon, or in some places known as the Hawk signal. With these applications, some of the things to be aware of with the installation of the Hawk system, studies have shown a reduction in crashes by 15 to 69%, depending on the type of installation. With the rapid flashing beacons, studies have shown a reduction in crashes from 13 to 58%, and those are great indications of improved safety and effectiveness in these locations. Also wanted to not to miss out on the pedestrian markings. There are several different types that are described in the Mbtcd, and in this case, there's an FHW report, crosswalk marking field visibility study, and there's the reference there at the bottom of that graphic, showing the different types of markings that are available for use and what circumstances. In this case, installation of high visibility crosswalks shown a crash reduction factor of 19 to 40%, depending on the type of crashes that you're dealing with. Again, a good opportunity. Our next group of vulnerable users are bicyclists, and this is becoming an increased mode of transportation across the country. There's a variety of signs that are intended to enhance the information for both the drivers and the bicyclists. One of the things that that there are specific applications for the signs for dedicated bike lanes. There's signage and markings for bike and trail crossings across roadways. And also looking at road signs indicating sharing the road or bicyclists' use of the lanes. There was a recent North Carolina, University of North Carolina study that looked at the use of the signs the bicycle may use full lane versus the general share the road type, and that study indicated and showed that they may be more effective with the bicycles may use full lane rather than sharing the road, and so that might be an opportunity if you have roadways or road segments that are used heavily with bicyclists to take that into consideration. In addition to signing, there's specific markings that are prescribed in the Mbtcd, and they should be and give enhanced visibility to where the bicyclist may be or where they would be sharing the lane of travel with vehicles. Another vulnerable road user is motorcyclists, and in particular, looking at areas where motorcyclists encounter work zones on roadways, maybe some unique or special adverse conditions that would make it difficult for them to travel, and should be aware of, like bicyclists, where areas where it would be popular for motorcyclists to use certain roadways. In this case, we're talking about groove pavement or areas where there might be uneven pavement, metal bridge decks, rough pavement, anything that could adversely impact the handling of the motorcycle. Always areas that need to be considered and potentially give advance warning or to the motorcyclist that they are approaching these kind of areas. Our last group of vulnerable road users that we want to address is older drivers. The population is aging, and that older populations are growing, and so that gives opportunities to provide some enhanced countermeasures to address these issues. There's the resource that we wanted to point out here is from FHWA, Travel Better, Travel Longer Pocket Guide for the older population. There's a website link there at the bottom of the slide. Talks considerably about how to implement sign and marking for older drivers, and a good general explanation on sign and marking standards that have been implemented to accommodate the older drivers. And it would be a good opportunity if you're in areas where your older population is growing, or it's an area where folks come on vacation or stay during times of the year. These may be a good an opportunity to do that. So this concludes the Section 1 material, and at this point I'll turn it back over to Jamie to handle the logistics of the questions.
Thank you, Robert. At this time, we'll be taking questions. You can direct those to us via the chat pod on the left-hand side of the screen. We do already have some questions over there, but first I'm going to move to our poll questions so everyone can answer this while we're getting some questions as well. Our poll question right now is, which of the following is not considered a vulnerable road user group? Older drivers, motorcyclists, semi-trucks, pedestrians, or bicyclists? So while everyone's filling that out, again, please go ahead and type your questions into the chat pod if you have any. Our first question is from FDOT, and this question is looking for some examples. So if anyone else out there has examples of what they're looking for and what they're asking, once I read the question, you can put your answers in the chat pod as well as our presenter. So FDOT has a new standard requiring the inline rumble stripes. However, the safety office would like to go to certain areas that will not be resurfaced for some time. Is there a good way to retrofit the inline rumble stripes without going too thick on our thermal and without scarring our asphalt with thermal removal? So Robert, if you know the answer to that question, and again, if anyone in the audience does as well, if you have examples of you doing that, please put those in the chat pod for Mario.
Well, I'm going to say I don't necessarily have a specific answer to that particular question, but I do know that the issue of not only the rumble stripes, but just rumble strips in general, in terms of overall pavement condition or when that pavement is going to be on the next cycle for replacement, is a significant issue. I probably categorize that question into that same overall general area that you need to look at what that pavement condition is going to be, and look at how that falls into the cycle of your pavement preservation program. There may be a need to do an alternative to that particular long-term in place placement, especially with thermal. That'd be a very tough material, and making sure that it really fits into the overall program. One of the issues you don't want to get into is actually, from a cost-effectiveness standpoint, put in a pavement marking or a mitigation that is going to be removed or need to be removed or cause more issues than you're trying to deal with. But there are, I would say that there are some resources around the country that could provide some guidance into that particular area.
Thank you, Robert. The next one is more of a statement than a question, but if you do have some feedback for this one as well. Generally in FDOT, they use the bikes may use full lane signs along with Chevrons, but I've heard of mixed results. For instance, there was an increase in crashes in a recent New York City study. They've also run into valid pushback when it comes to what truck percentage and what speeds to use with the bike signs and markings.
That's very good information. It would be interesting to find out if, with the increase in crashes in the New York City study, if there was how that related to increase in the use also of bicycles, if there was a corresponding increase in the amount of bicycles using those locations, therefore increasing the amount of exposure and increasing, if you will, just the likelihood of more crashes. So that'd be an interesting aspect to look into.
And Robert, at this point, it looks like everyone has taken the poll, so I did go ahead and broadcast those results for you if you want to address the poll.
That clearly shows that the vulnerable road user group is definitely not semi-trucks. As we presented, older drivers, motorcyclists, pedestrians, bicyclists are considered vulnerable road users, mainly because they're definitely exposed without the protective shell, if you will, of the vehicle around them. Okay, moving on to our section, signing and marking maintenance. And again, to kick things off, we wanted to have a little visual graphic here of some signs here, and how do you think about when does a sign need to be replaced? And if you look at every one of these signs, there are some issues with each and every one of them. Some having to do with non-compliance, some needing to be replaced because of gunshots or vandalism and stickers, and some maintenance issues, knockdown sign and vegetation growing over the stop sign. These are just some examples that get us started in this section. I wanted to talk about just some opportunities to, in terms of dealing with your signing and markings from a maintenance and replacement standpoint, how sign inventories or inventories and inventory programs in general can help with this issue, looking at the life of your mitigation, manage and priority where the new signs may be needed, minimizing liability issues, addressing your budgeting issues, and being efficient with your operations. One of the things that we wanted to point out is that the inventory systems can take many forms, many shapes, and it really needs to be more targeting to the needs of what your agency needs, maybe not to overreach into a system that doesn't really serve your needs or capabilities is an important part. Address this a little bit. We wanted to provide some information on some resources that are available. In particular, the first one listed here is FHWA's Tapping into the Power of a Traffic Sign Inventory. It's been around for a little while, but it provides some good basic information of what you would be needing to look for in a signed inventory. There are some options out there. This is a list of a few of them that are widely used, from Agile Assets, 3M, and Esri. And again, one of the important considerations is making sure that it fits your needs. Get the system, and maybe even very simple, but get the system that's going to work best for you to accomplish the goals of what you need to do. So as an example, these are some common data elements for sign inventory. Looking at identification number, the Mbtcd sign code, location, height, pole support, installation. These are elements that depending on your needs could be utilized and part of the system. At a very minimum, your installation date and the sign identification is probably one of the two key elements there to give you an indication of the life of the sign and where it is. Those are probably the bare minimums that you would need to consider. Along with the data elements, should look at the inspection elements for sign inventory. Some of the critical issues to look for, again, is the sign condition. Is it the quality of the sign from a visual aspect? Is it faded? Is it readable? The retroflectivity, not only is it can be seen during the day, but at night also. Some other additional information that tends to be very useful is the maintenance activity. When was the last maintenance done on that sign? If it was cleaned, or if it was, if you will, replaced because of a knockdown. When did that maintenance occur? When did that last inspection happen? If it was interested in who the inspector was, to provide continuity and their comments. These are all inspection elements that can be included in a sign inventory program. In addition to that, I just wanted to address potentially some just good practices, some noteworthy opportunities for your agencies to observe sign and marking conditions while out doing your regular maintenance out on the roadways. Always a good opportunity as you're driving somewhere to do some maintenance to do these sign and marking inspections along the way that can be done. Wanted to really emphasize the opportunity to utilize the public and or law enforcement officers that are out on the road, provide a mechanism for them to provide feedback to your agency about what they see. A lot of times the public or the law enforcement officers can be your additional set of eyes out on the roadway to identify issues and alert you to things that need to be fixed and corrected. So emphasizing a mechanism for that feedback to get back to you. Some of this may be a little bit common sense, but again, we wanted to look at some of these priority issues to be looking at, especially with signs with the repair and replacement, vandalism. Going back to the first slide that we saw here, being hit by a vehicle. Sometimes they're damaged by weather or are moved by private individuals. And the last part, especially in dealing with the programmatic approach to your signing program or your marking program, is when it reaches the end of its useful life. all of this can be part of the normal routine of maintenance, of your maintenance activities out there, and help you lead to establishing a program that can help you with these issues. And that was a quick section 2. And again, I'll turn time over to Jamie with questions.
Thank you, Robert. And again, you can direct your questions to Robert via the chat pod over on the left-hand side. I am going to switch over. We have another poll question for you guys now while we're taking questions. So a sign and marking inventory can help to A, determine the requirements for new signs, B, obtain funding for new signs, or C, manage and prioritize where new signs should be located. And we do have a follow-up from FDOT. Some more information on the specific rumble striping. It says, details on this specific rumble striping project is that there have been multiple fatalities from lane departures, so we didn't want to wait 12 more years for our project to come through. However, we didn't want to ruin good asphalt either, especially in a very affluent area that will probably hate the rumble noises anyway. So that was additional information on that project. And then on the bike signs, they mentioned that there was an increase in bicyclists. However, since their state is trying to reduce crashes and not necessarily increase bike ridership, many in the organization pushed back against the bike sharing the roadway signs because it's giving bicyclists a false sense of security. We do have, Mario, someone did provide in the chat pod for you as well an FHWA study and report on rumble strips and pavement conditions as well. Robert, did you have any response to either of those, or would you like me to move on to the next question?
No, I just appreciate Rudy Youngs for providing that link to that FHWA report. That's very appreciated, Rudy. Also, Paul Carlson from CPI. I was asking a question about sharing some examples of policies on rural agencies meeting the Mbtcd sign retro regulations. We have upcoming a list of resource information dealing specifically with rural roadways, and so I'm not exactly sure if it is your question is addressed specifically, but we can look into that and see after if we can find some examples of what you're asking there, Paul.
Okay. Robert, we also have another question. Are there cleaning guidelines? Is bleach okay, or should something else be used for the signs?
The best thing to do, to be honest, is to check with the sheeting manufacturer or the company that provided built the signs. If you purchase your signs from a private manufacturer, there are specific cleaning guidelines, materials that they would recommend and don't recommend, depending on the composition of the sign sheeting. You need to be very careful with what you use to clean those spaces. But again, going back to the manufacturer specifically about the sheeting is the key element.
Okay, one more question. I did not hear anything about the FHWA requirements to have a replacement program. This is what truly drives the current need for all entities to have an inventory. Do you have any comments, I guess, on the FHWA replacement program requirement?
Well, I'm definitely not going to speak for on behalf of FHWA. The main point that I would want to stress, though, is requirement or not, it's just it's best business practice, the most efficient process for your agency to manage your budget and manage the needs for signing and striping, to develop a program for you to address that. That's really the point I'm trying to stress here is what's the best business practice for your agency in dealing with the needs of your drivers and users of your roadway.
Thank you, Robert. We do have some more information on the rumble stripes and rumble strips that did come in through the chat pod. It says for more information on both of those, you can contact Dave Marina at FHWA Michigan, 517-702-1836, or Frank Julian at the FHWA Resource Center, and his number is 404-562-3689. So I'm going to end our poll and broadcast those results for you, Robert.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. It looks like most of the people looked at managing and stated managing and prioritizing where new signs should be located, how an inventory can help you. And that is probably the main thing, but I would say the other two also are impacted by that opportunity to utilize a signing and marking inventory too.
Okay, we're going to move back to the presentation for you. Again, for anyone that's listening in, if you have questions as Robert's going through, please feel free to put them in the chat pod and we'll move back to them at the end of this section. Back to you, Robert.
Okay, thank you. Our next section deals with some signing and marking challenges that you could be facing, and what we wanted to also present were some resources, list of resources that could give you some guidance on how to address everything that we've discussed today, and addressing some of these challenges. One of the biggest issues that comes up in these discussions about signing and marking on rural roadways, and especially with local agencies, is liability and litigation. The key to point out is lawsuits are almost inevitable. As a government agency, you're a target, and you may end up being in lawsuits. But that fear of a lawsuit shouldn't and should not drive you in terms of your practices, and actually is not an excuse for a lack of inaction. In fact, that actually makes your defensible position considerably worse. This is a big topic area, one that requires a lot more time than we have available to address this by itself. It's probably a webinar on its own. But what we wanted to do is to give some information on some potential resources that are available to you, in particular the LTAP centers in your states. They can help you find resources available to deal with some of this information on liability and litigation. We have a couple of resources referenced here in the slide, one from the New York LTAP Center, and also one from the Nebraska LTAP. are available to provide some basic information that might help you guide you a little bit, but also we want to make sure that when it really comes down to any of these questions, to contact your local or county council, your attorneys, for support to make sure that you feel you are on good solid ground and making sure that your programs are built in a way to address those issues. Really, we really are encouraging to adopt policies that can help you with your programs to make sure that you are providing the best products out there for your signing and marking uses. In addition to that, some additional resources that are available nationally. There's a National Cooperative Highway Research Program, 20-06, legal problems arising out of highway problems. Within that broad research project, there are a couple of items that came out of that. One is the Legal Review Digest number 3, talking about liability of state and local governments with negligence arising out of the installation and maintenance of warning signs, traffic lights, and pavement markings. Slightly older product, but still has some pertinent information. And then topic 19-03 from 2014, the effect of Mbtcd on tort liability. Again, gives some resource information available to you in dealing with this issue of liability and the fear of litigation associated with that. The next big topic that tends to come up is limited funding. All of us, all agencies are dealing with limited funds and limited resources. Again, point to make is that budget limitations are not an excuse not to maintain signs or markings, and are not an excuse for inaction. Building, again, the encouragement here is to consider building a program to help you address this approach to dealing with your signs and markings and of being more efficient and effective in utilizing the funds that you have for your priority needs. There are opportunities for local agencies to apply for Highway Safety Improvement Program funds through the state DOTs. This is the FHWA federal program, safety program. It's important to point out this is for new sign installations. Sign maintenance and marking maintenance is not eligible for the HSIP funding. One thing to consider is also looking at a program of systematic upgrades of signs. Looking at that as an opportunity. There was a question earlier about sign retroflectivity, meeting those requirements. This is an opportunity based on your age, the age of the signs, or the conditions of the signs to do a systematic upgrade. Again, it's important to stress that this is really our outcomes of a programmatic-based approach to dealing with your signs and markings. I mentioned early on that one of the issues that some may face or may end up needing to deal with is sign and markings on tribal lands. And again, this is a very big topic area that has a lot of detail and nuances to it, more than we have time available. But we wanted to provide some at least some references to some resources that may be available to you to help start you down this path if this is something that you need to address. There are local tribal technical assistance programs, TTAPs, in some states. The Road Safety Fundamentals Guidebook is another good resource. National LTAP and TTAP associated training and resources are available in these areas. There's a web link there for the NLTAPA, the National LTAP organization on this material. Again, a lot to consider in this area, and wanting to just provide some basic guidance, some resources to guide you to some resources that might help you in this area. Again, it's a very big and complex area that you may have to deal with. Getting into some of the other challenges, compliance with the Mbtcd. This is quite honestly, is a very beneficial process to consider, that being compliant with the national Mbtcd or your state's adopted Mbtcd really provides a great opportunity to make sure that you are consistent, you're meeting the requirements being spelled out about the implementation of the particular signs and devices and markings. Helps you manage your risk associated with the signs and markings, because it's your guide of how to do it. And the bottom line of this is just to make sure that we are focused in on improving safety of the road users. The Mbtcd also truly helps you with the objective of being consistent in the use of signs and markings. It reduces, again, that risk of liability, can provide you information that is beneficial on sign maintenance and the use of it, and how you would utilize these signs and markings, and helps you with looking at everything as a special case. It provides you guidance with pretty much the majority of the situations you're going to end up dealing with. So to wrap all of this kind of up together, we wanted to present a case study, and one that's probably one of the most widely documented and highly touted as a case study for rural roads and their signing and maintenance, marking maintenance programs. This is Mendocino County, north of San Francisco. It's got a good number of residents in the county, and around 1,000 center line miles of road to be maintained. This is a very good example of what to do, how to do it, and the success that could be gained from it. A little bit of the background. They began their review system in the 90s. Each year, 1/3 of all the county roads are reviewed for safety, and it identifies potential signing and marking deficiencies, and it's a programmatic approach to addressing those issues. So what happens? This is in a 6-year comparison of the total crashes. They were reduced by over 40% in those areas that all of the roads that they looked at. In that same period, roads that were not reviewed showed an increase in the number of crashes, just in dealing with that signing and marking issues. And a very important part of this is the development of benefit cost ratios associated with what they did. And you can see here very, very high numbers ranging from 159 to 1 to nearly 300 to 1 benefit to cost in terms of the reductions in crashes and fatalities and serious injuries compared to the cost of the installation of the mitigations that they used. So again, the main point here is showing that addressing these signing and marking issues, targeting your programmatic crash areas and looking at the issues from a location standpoint can really provide an economic benefit to you and to your areas. So finally, what we have here is a couple of slides of resources that are available. Again, this is a good list. It's not clearly not going to be comprehensive of all the resources available, but a lot of these are focused in on rural roads, local roadways, low volume roads, and give guidance on how these entities have addressed these issues that we're talking about today in the webinar. This list is going to be available afterwards, after this webinar. So we have this slide of resources, and then some additional resources available to you addressing these particular issues. And with that, that concludes all the materials that we have in Section 3 and the majority of the information that we wanted to present today in the webinar. So Jamie, back to you.
Thank you. So we'll now open it up again for questions via the chat pod. Over on the left-hand side, if you have any, please feel free to put those in. We also have an additional poll question for you. If your agency has litigation questions concerning signing and marking issues, which of the following is not a recommended resource? Local general practice defense attorney, local or county counsel, or regional LTAP and TTAP? While we're waiting to see if there are any questions coming in through the chat pod, we do have one for you here. Robert, what can practitioners do to convince local elected officials that a sign replacement program is important?
Well, to be blunt, the way to the local officials is to really talk about who they are serving, which is the public and the citizens who voted for them. They're in these elected positions to serve, and by addressing the needs of their citizens, their constituents, by providing signing and marking in the purpose of improving safety on the roadways in the local jurisdiction, really emphasizes why they're there. And but again, the point is not but the point is to back it up with the information that that provides the hard numbers to it too, to show how the use of certain signs or pavement markings in certain locations can provide that crash reduction and improve that safety. So one, addressing the needs of the public by improving the road system, and then also providing the information that shows these are the this is the effectiveness of the mitigations that we need to implement. It's kind of a two-part strategy.
Thank you, Robert. We do have a question about, will the slides from the presentation be available, and if so, how will notification of their availability be made? When I do switch back over to the presentation, there is a handout box that I will point out to you guys in the center of the screen, and you can download the presentation in PDF format from there. At the end of this presentation, I'll also be giving you the link that you can go to receive the archived version of this, the recording, as well as the PDF of the presentation on our website as well. So I will point that out as soon as we are done with the poll question. And so, Robert, I'll end the poll and broadcast those results for you if you'd like to address those.
Sure. The poll showing that the general practice defense attorney is not the resource going to the local LTAP or the state local LTAP center or the local county or county council to help you out is our resources that are available to address some of these issues for you and help you find the resources necessary.
And so I'll point out now as we're moving over to the presentation, there was someone still typing in a question, and that's fine. You can go ahead and keep putting that in. But down here in the center and the bottom underneath the presentation, there's a handouts pod. If you click on the handout in there, you can it'll give you the ability to download that file, and that includes the PDF of today's presentation. And again, it will also be available on the Safety Center's website. Robert, if you'd like to go over this slide, and we'll see if the question comes in that's being typed after this slide, okay?
Sure. Again, appreciate everybody's time being on the webinar and participating with us today. We wanted to address the learning outcomes again one last time. That through this webinar, we hope that you're able to identify the critical issues that you may be facing out there in your signing and markings. Understand some of the benefits to the signing and marking maintenance and the establishment of the programs, and dealing with the critical liability issues that you would be facing with signing and marking, and in particular the maintenance issues associated with that.
Robert, the last question did come in, and it's saying that Creative Commons was listed as a reference on some of the presentation slides, and the question is that they're unfamiliar with that organization. Do you know a little bit about the organization to address that?
Yes, they are actually a resource for marketing materials and presentation materials only. They provide photographs and graphics and that sort of thing. They're available via the web. So not a safety organization, a marketing organization for materials.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you very much for your presentation today. We really appreciated you taking the time to present, and thank you everyone for attending. I would like to let you know about our upcoming webinar. We have one on March 22nd at 9 a.m. Mountain Time. It's going to be an overview of the factors that increase organization safety culture. This will be an overview of a NCHRP scanning tour that was just completed. You can register for that at the above link. The below link are ruralsafetycenter.org. If you go to our training pages, there's an archived safety trainings page. That is where you'll be able to find the recording of this webinar, as well as the handout of the slides. We also want to make sure that you're aware that we do have a recently released training video on the introduction to road safety culture. It was just released last month. That can be found on our multimedia page on our website, and it is gives a very good introduction to road safety culture and explains the definition in a layman's terms type of way. We also do have a training video on who is the National Center for Rural Road Safety as well, if you haven't seen that one. We do want to let you know as well that we are working on a national working summit on transportation in rural America. That is going to be held September 7th through 9th in Denver, Colorado. It will be, the reason it's called a working summit is because we do intend to have everybody who attends speak on different topics. Rather than having podium speakers, it will be more of a workshop type summit, and the output will be white papers. So you can find more information on this on our news and events page. The registration for this will be opening later in February. And don't forget, if you found this training valuable, you can tweet it out using hashtag #SafetyCenterTraining. You can like us on Facebook to get updated, and also make sure you join our distribution list. This will allow you to find out first when our webinars are upcoming and how you can register for those, and also when we release our new trainings and our new videos. So once again, thank you everyone for attending, and thank you very much, Robert, for presenting today.
Thank you. Appreciate it.